What's going on, guys? It's your boy Random Guy Kev, and this is Thoughts of a Random Guy. We talk about many things dealing with love, dating, relationships, adulting, life's ups and downs, and the ever-evolving world of just being a human. Don't forget to check me out on all your favorite social media platforms at Random Guy Kev and my website at randomguykev.com. Today's topic is about trauma, and my co-host for this episode is
Christopher Hoyt.
What's going on, Chris? Thank you for coming on. Hopefully, I feel like this topic is an interesting one, and I feel like it goes many different ways. And with trauma, I feel like we all deal with trauma in some form, where it's, family, relationships, jobs, again, just life in general. And I feel like as men, we don't talk about our traumas or emotions and things of that nature. It's very dependent on the situation, but I feel like we don't really talk about it and identifying what our trauma is. And I think that's, in my personal opinion, takes a therapist sometimes to identify you went through this trauma. This is trauma type vibes. And I think going through therapy for me personally has helped me identify what my trauma is, and I'm able to, if I'm dealing with somebody, I'm able to immediately address hey, this is my trauma, and this is how I'm trying to not kind of overcome it or get past it in a sense. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, it's funny that you say that, is because I do go to therapy. I've been in therapy since the beginning of the pandemic, and then even before that, I've been doing it for over 2 decades, mm-hmm. right? And it's still sort of has always kicked off. I feel like I learned some new horrible thing that's happened,
about yourself, right?
Yeah, and but it's funny because one of the things that for me, I never talked about it before,
mm-hmm.
and then surprisingly enough, it was actually some friends that convinced me to talk about my trauma inadvertently.
Mm-hmm.
A little side story. Actually, a mutual friend of ours, we were hanging out, and I was telling a story that I always thought was funny.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically I used to be, so poor that I had sleep for dinner, and it was one of those things that I would laugh about it, and I was I had sleep 2 or 3 times a week, and
mm-hmm.
and I told that story, so I thought it was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, no, man, that sucks. That's really sad. And I was like, no, it's good. And they were like, no, are you sure? And then, it kind of clicked with me that this story that I had been sort of touting as a funny little anecdote was actually a very distressful thing for me. And my friend had he had reached out and he was like, hey, if there's stuff that bothers you, you should talk about it,
mm-hmm.
And it took me a really long time, but that coupled with therapy, and it's one of those things that especially in relationships where I feel safe and secure,
mm-hmm.
I feel comfortable opening up. So in that state of mindfulness,
mm-hmm.
I do recognize that for men it's very difficult to have those spaces where you can talk about that trauma without it becoming toxic. I think that's another thing.
Yep.
Is you've got a lot of these people that are on the internet, like Andrew Tate and whoever, where they're not talking about trauma as a survivor or working through it. They're talking about it as asserting that they were the victim and trying to make somebody else a victim of their response, I guess, to their own trauma. It's that kind of toxic space to open up about it is something that I've always steered away from. But for me, having the right people in your life that you can talk about that trauma,
Yeah.
that's like
Yep.
that's how I feel. Yeah.
I agree with that. When it comes to trauma, it's a lot that goes into it, and sometimes we don't even recognize that we are, we have this trauma until we seek a professional, and a professional's letting us know, like, yeah, no, that's a real trauma. That's not a funny thing. That's not a funny moment. That's something you actually went through that's causing problems in your life and causing problem with the people around you. And how do you go about healing that? And it's like sometimes people don't know how to go about healing that. For me personally, my trauma, of course, it's my sister, my dad dying. It's like it always flares up for me personally. Just the other day, literally driving home, I called one of my day ones, just like crying because of how much I miss my sister and my dad. And it's like it'll flare up because I just want to talk to them. I just want to hear their voices. And it's like, bro, I don't have that. And that's a trauma for me because again, they're not around anymore. And it sucks and it hurts me all the time. But I know that right there, if I'm able to be vulnerable with the people closest to me about that, I know I've grown so much because it takes me a while to get vulnerable with people around me, and the specific people, and my friends know that. And if I'm sitting there bawling, Kevin don't do that. Kevin barely does that. Kevin barely shares this type of information, and when he does, like, bro, like, damn, he really feeling it. So it's like that's a trauma for me, and I know it's a trauma, and with anybody I'm dealing with, I let them know, like, yo, this is a trauma for me, and if you see me crying, just let me cry. I just need somebody to listen, I guess. And that's normally what it comes down to. But then there's, the other type of trauma where, which I've been through, another one I've been through where you have something bad happen in your in previous relationships that you project onto people around you because you think they're going to do the same thing to you.
Yeah.
And that's the worst feeling, especially if you don't know that that person went through that trauma. They had something hurt them, and they just used that to kind of blame everybody else around them instead of identifying, like, yo, this is my trauma that I keep pushing on to people, and that's why, like, I act the way that I do instead of trying to actually identify the trauma and heal from it.
Well, and I think that's one of those things is if you understand that better in yourself, it's easier to also, like, understand it for others.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're dealing with like other people and the way that they, like, you talk about relationships and stuff, being present for your partner and being like, hey, like, this response is very similar to a response that I have. Like, let's talk about it. Is this something that's coming from something else? Like, it's like helping you identify and spot, like, trauma from another perspective is like one of the best inadvertent rewards of, like, dealing with your own shit.
I mean, we all, again, I feel like everybody needs a therapist. I know your partner's not really your therapist, but they are more so your safe space. Or they should be your safe space where you feel like if they give you some type of feedback, you're able to receive it and be like, okay, I need to adjust this or talk to my therapist so I have a better understanding of how I'm coming across. There's a couple times where, my partner had said something to me, my previous partner had said something to me, and then I'm like, yo, what? And then I go to my therapist and, like, yo, hey, my partner had said X, Y, and Z, and my therapist is like, yeah, no, that doesn't even sound right. That doesn't even sound like you at all. The time that I've gotten to know you and everything that you've told me doesn't even sound like you. It sounds like something that's projecting from this person from a past relationship. and you should have a discussion about it, a further deeper discussion about it. And again, like I say, I feel like, again, therapy helps identify certain things, because you don't know this person. This person shouldn't be your friend. They should be sitting there fucking checking the shit out of you, like, this is wrong behavior. Like, you could have your close friends, you could talk to your close friends about shit, and sometimes 9 times out of 10 your close friends will tell you shit that, hey, yo, that's wrong, you shouldn't be doing that. But when you hear from a third party that doesn't really know you, that says the same thing, it's like, oh, okay, shit, damn, fuck, yeah, you right.
It's like, not necessarily to be like professionally critical, but like to be professionally, you know, like objective and
Yep.
like, yeah, no, that's important.
Yeah.
That's incredibly important. And
Go ahead.
I think that's one of those things. Is like, you know, what sucks is having trauma, like having stuff that you've had happen to you. Sometimes some people take it as like they're, you know, they don't have to do any more work because they've already done the work of having this thing happen. And it's like one of those things that, like, you need, even though this horrible thing has happened to you, you need accountability.
Yeah.
You need to have that accountability for the actions that you are, you know, the moves you're making, the things you say, the things you do, especially if it's, you know, through the lens of a traumatic experience. And I don't think that, like, I think that there's like a lot of resilience to therapy for that kind of stuff, because for a lot of people that's scary. That's vulnerability, you know.
Yeah, and
So.
and I think for me personally, being vulnerable with my close friends has, for me, I feel like built a new relationship, or built a new bridge between me and certain people in my friend group. And it's like, damn, I never thought I could be the person to come to you for this, and I did.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, like, I shared my trauma with you. Like, I'm vulnerable with you in this moment. And, you know, people just like, oh, you know, you should be healing from this. Yo, you can never heal from death. In my opinion, I feel like it's something, you'll have ways to deal with it, but fully healing from, you know, losing people in your life, it's a rough thing. Especially like with the way my sister and my dad died. It was like, bro, like, what the hell? Other stuff, if it doesn't come to that level, I'm sorry, like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, if people leave my life, okay, that's fine. Life goes on. I just move forward. But like,
It's I think that's sort of the pain of not being able to say goodbye in the way that you want to, you know. It feels like a lack of closure. And that's you're right, that is hard. That's incredibly hard to, like, just not have, you know. And you know,
do you feel like in regards to trauma, you know, of course everybody goes through trauma in their own ways, but in this day and age, with therapy and, you know, a lot of companies providing, you know, mental health related insurance stuff, part of your policy, do you feel like not enough people are taking advantage of seeking help for their trauma, or realizing that they are going through trauma?
are we
Some
allowed
type
to
of trauma.
are we allowed to swear on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, fuck yeah. I think everybody and their fucking brother needs to be, like, if you have resource for it, you should be utilizing it. It's like, you know, a lot of companies are using Headspace, right? And I mean, you know, it like, Fast Company is raving the shit about it. You know, it's one of those things. It's like one of those things that, even if you're not talking to somebody, you need to start the process of working on your shit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, here's something. If you tell me, if I met you and you're like, I don't have trauma, I've never had anything traumatic happen to me in my life, I'm gonna say bullshit, because unless you were born fucking yesterday or were on another planet for the past how many fucking years,
You got
like,
something.
like you got that's something.
You got something.
You got something cooking there, because like we just went through some traumatic shit, right?
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things that like people still like I still have trauma responses, and supposedly this shit's over. Like I went to the grocery store the other day, and it's just me and my girlfriend. It's just the two of us that live together. We don't need 42 rolls of toilet paper, but I'm gonna buy it anyway because like, that's a trauma response. That's like I've got an emergency closet, okay? And that's the thing, is like, if my job is willing to help me deal with the 100 rolls of toilet paper that are in my fucking closet because I'm scared of what happened 3.5 years ago,
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that. I am gonna use that.
And the thing is, it's crazy. Like, of course, I'm always gonna bring up my sister and my dad because that's always a trauma thing for me. And it's like whenever I see my sister's car, like somebody have a similar car to my sister, it's like, damn, I gotta turn my head because my sister died in a car accident. She died in a car accident. Nobody else in my family. I haven't told anybody else this really. Nobody else in my family has seen the car after the accident. Only my cousin has. But I was there to pick up. I had to go pick up the car, move the car, get it moved, get it towed, get it put in a lot. Make sure I grabbed her insurance information from the car. And the way that the car was so damaged and her blood was all over the car, it took everything in me to not want to fight the air. Like, it was like the most overwhelming feeling. It was a feeling that I've never felt before. And it hit me, I want to say, it hit me a couple years later that I put myself in that situation because I wanted everybody else to not have to go through that.
Yeah.
And that's how I've always been. I never want somebody to go through something if I can do my best to hold it in for everyone else. And it's like, even getting the car, when I had to get the car disposed of, I had to call one of my boys because at that point I was like, I just need somebody there personally because I've seen this car too many times, and it made me question life. Made me question, like, God, why weren't you here to protect her like you said you would?
Well, and it's like one of those things that, like, even, you know, my dad he worked for a fire department, and he was a cop, you know, back in the 90s, and he said, you know, one of the things that always was challenging for him was seeing these instances of disaster. You know what I mean? Like, and so even somebody who's like essentially a non-partisan in that situation, like just kind of a third party to the whole thing, he still was like, I had nightmares, you know, I see faces. And it's one of those things that, like, you think about that, and then if that's what somebody is feeling that is not a part of that situation, and they still will live with it forever, like, being critical of yourself later over something that, like, you know, I couldn't. You're explaining this scene to me, and it's like I can't. Like, I can imagine it, but I can't imagine it, you know. And it's one of those things that, like, going back to, like, asking for help and being vulnerable and open to, like, having these, hard conversations, a lot of times you need that help dealing with it in the moment, and like calling somebody, like having those people, having those people that like that are just there for you to help you in that moment. Like it's hard to find those people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, you also got to be careful that like you're in these relationships with these people, like you have these friendships. A lot of times, the fear of oversharing is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, putting too much pressure, putting too much wear and tear on the relationship, so it breaks. Because then, if it breaks, like you're dealing not only with like the external trauma, but now you're dealing with this internal trauma of like, I'm losing this friend and this person that was so integral to my life,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's just like having the perfect social and emotional ecosystem to flourish
Yeah.
is not, like, as you said, you don't get over loss completely, but you deal with it better, you respond to it better, and that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain type of loss you can easily get over, other ones you don't. But at the same time, it's like, make sure you're dealing with your trauma, identifying your trauma, and then dealing with it. Like, yes, like you said earlier, somebody said that hey, I don't have trauma. No, no. No. You have some sort of trauma. You just haven't figured out what it is. You haven't figured out what the trauma is. Go seek help. Because it could be something from your childhood that you bring into your adult life, and you don't realize it's a trauma because you've just kind of accepted it instead of addressing it. And a lot of times you could say how we were raised. There's something there that's affected us, and we kind of just blocked out. Instead of, damn, that was trauma as a child? I thought that was just regular stuff. No. Nah. Certain things make you who you are today. So I consider like seeking help, seeking therapy, that's a self-care process for you.
Yeah.
That's self-care. You have to think about yourself at the end of the day. Tomorrow is never promised, but you can plan for it. So you got to focus on today.
It's funny that you say self-care. Is like, I have always, been a big fan of telehealth. And I used to schedule my appointments. It used to be every Wednesday, 12:30, and by noon I'd have my sandwich from my favorite sub shop here in Boston, and I'd like sit back, headphones on. I put my comfy slippers on, and I would just like, I'd be like, hey, you don't mind if I eat? It got to a point where he was like, you got your sandwich? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, you got your drink? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, all right, let's get into this. So I mean, it should be. It's not a spa day. It's work. It's the same thing as going to the gym. But at the end of the day, it's like you just feel better doing it. You feel so much better doing it because, like, for me, you've known me for how long? 6 years, 7 years, and it's like one of those things that, like, I remember like pre-COVID, like, before I really got into like working through some of the stuff that I was going through, I was a nightmare. Like, I used to just like take my I get pissed off and be like, let me get on Facebook and bully some guy on Facebook group. Like, it was awful. and because I was like, I never have to deal with this person, and I just like, I looked back and I was like, this
isn't good.
But it sucked because somebody had said to me, when I see you do that, it makes me afraid to cross you. And I was like, oh God. Like, I I felt so bad because I was like, cross me, like what? Like
What did I do?
you can't cross. That's fine. I don't. And then I was like, oh God, it's not like,
Yeah.
and so I like, yeah, it's just like all that anger is. I mean, for the most part, like a lot of that anger is, it can still be there, but I don't deal with the after effects of like when I process it anymore, because there are little to none, and it's just like that's gratifying, you know.
My thing is, that's a whole other topic, talking about regret. Me personally, like, I'm all about, I'm gonna say how I feel, but I've learned over the past year and some change. I've been working on my delivery, because my delivery's ass, and my delivery is all about, I'm just gonna say what I say, and I don't regret anything I say because that's how I feel. But there's a nicer way to say certain things, and that's what I'm on right now. Saying things in a nicer way so it doesn't get turned into something crazy.
Yeah, you may not regret like what you say, but you regret how
it's
how
said.
other people feel.
Correct.
Yeah, and I will say, like, stepping away from talking in general, like, terms, I have noticed that. Like, I'll say it, like, you and I didn't talk for a while.
Yeah.
Because it was hard for us to, like, have, like, on both ends, have conversation without, like, our shit flaring up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I will say that, like, like, your name is a common name in our household. Now, like, so, like, you know, and I think also it's like you and I were really close for a really, really long time, and then we sort of like we're going through this, like, especially during COVID, you and I kind of like burned off a little bit because we're both dealing with everything. You were stuck at home dealing with everything, and I feel like, you know, you told me, you're like, I'm in therapy, I'm doing this, I'm talking, and I remember, like, very specifically, I was like, I'm proud of you, dude. Like, this is fucking cool. Like, so, and I think, yeah, and it shows. Like, the work that you're doing shows. So,
but supposedly I don't do work, but that's a different topic. Whole different topic. But yeah, I mean, as we come to a close, I want to thank you, Chris, for coming on and sharing, being a little vulnerable in regards to the trauma topic. Anything you want to close out with before we end?
Get therapy.
Yeah.
You know, Lyra, BetterHelp.
Yep.
You know, whatever telehealth you can find. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable sitting in front of somebody, and just like it just helps. Mm-hmm. It helps you. It helps everybody around you. You just, you know, you want to grow. Get that sun. You know, get what you need, and that's what you need.
Nah, I agree 100%. But that's it for this episode, guys. You can find me on all social media platforms at Random Guy Kev, and my website at randomguykev.com. Don't forget to check in, and I will catch you guys on the next one.